Same trait I had back then is why I'm successful now is why I was back then, which was tenacity. I just always pushed forward and never really thought of the word no.
This is Entrepreneurs the Playbook, where I give you access each week to the world's greatest athletes and executives about their personal and professional playbook and what has made them champions on and off the field. This is the Playbook. This is Dave Meltzer with Entrepreneurs, the Playbook, and I have Jennifer Cohen. I think we should have been married, by the way. She's my kind of girl. Unbelievable mother of two, author, speaker, entrepreneur, into mental fitness as well as physical fitness, which we're going to get into. What I love about your story, Jennifer, is that, you know, when I talk to you, I have 3 daughters, and I'm thinking, okay, another great woman entrepreneur. But I love when I'm just thinking, and the story comes out, I'm like, it's just an entrepreneur. She does everything an entrepreneur should do and thinks outside the box, believes in herself, persistent. You had a ton of setbacks that you turned into setups. You know, not everyone knows who you are. So I'd love for you to kind of go through a quick rendition of how you go from the music industry to one of the leading fitness technology entrepreneur, speaker, author. You had a New York Times bestseller. So that's not like a BS bestseller like mine. That's like Amazon bestseller. I got a new book coming out on McGraw-Hill that's going to be a New York Times bestseller. That's a real deal.
Thank you. This is quite an intro. I'm going to come back next week.
Well, I'm looking for the wedding ring. My wife's getting sick of me. So.
Oh, wow. Okay, listen.
Another nice Jewish girl, Mom.
Oh, God. I love it. That's so flattering. Thank you.
Oh, cool.
Okay, I don't even know where to begin. So there's a lot of questions all rolled up into one.
Let me slow it down.
Okay.
You got started in the music industry?
I did. I actually got started in the sports world. I thought that I kind of forgot to mention that my first real quote unquote job was with the Toronto Raptors. And I was like the youngest employee I think they hired. I was 19, and I was working in corporate sales, and they were looking at me like, why the hell are we hiring this girl? And then turns out because of the same trait I had back then is why I'm successful now is why I was back then, which was tenacity. I just always pushed forward and never really thought of the word no. And if someone did give me slam the door in my face, I'd always find a window or something else. And I think that really is a through line for everything in success, is that not really kind of giving up and kind of figuring out and being resourceful to get to what you need.
And you get into the music world.
I get into the music world.
And it kind of says no to you.
So basically what happened was I was in the sports, then went back to school for my MBA, then got a job offer to go to BMG Music in Canada. And from there, I got another job offer to move to Los Angeles, which was the mecca of entertainment,
right? Which is where you live now.
Which is where I live now, exactly.
I got
not
it right
Phoenix.
finally, yeah.
And so I was doing that for a couple years, doing quite well. I was moving up the ladder. And the music was really taking a turn. Everything was like, iTunes, everything was shifting to a more of a technology-based thing. And I thought, you know what, this is not really what I want to be doing. I've always been super athletic, loved fitness, and thought, you know what, I'm gonna leave this and kind of become a trainer, get my certification, and kind of like figure it out. I was young enough, and I should say I was also illegal because I was on a worker's visa.
Don't listen to Donald Trump.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I hope he's not listening to that. Well, now I'm legal, so it's fine.
Good, very cool.
And so what I did was I got my certification, and like I said, I never really wanted to have a cap on I never wanted to limit myself. So I was kind of clever, so to speak, in my thinking, where I went back to where I knew I already had relationships, and I had relationships in the marketing departments at labels, given what I used to do. And I really created a job for myself. I saw how the marketing budget was being used, and I went to one label and created myself as a label trainer, where I would then train as a personal trainer, now not in the marketing world, but now as a trainer, training all the different talent they had on the roster as they were getting ready for different tours.
When you pitch that, right, this is what entrepreneurs don't get. Mm-hmm. You created your own
I created my own opportunity.
And so you went and pitched it to someone.
Yes.
And what did that pitch in your mind? Was there an ROI connected to it? How did you convince them that it was needed?
Right. So that's a good question. So I like I said, I had the background to understand they were spending at the time. Now, remember, labels now are very different. It's a different world. But at the time, they were spending a lot of money, marketing money on these things. So I already knew I had like a leg up. And so I went in there offering way less money, but yet more money than for me. Like if you're an actual trainer going to work at a gym, you're lucky they take 50% of your money, right? So if you're lucky if you're making $50 an hour or $40 an hour, or if you're a private trainer, you're only capped at whatever that amount of hour is, right?
Right. Which is why I didn't like to practice law.
Well, exactly. You're right. No, because you're capped, right? It's
exactly.
It's the ancillary opportunities for law, but whatever. We can that could be on my podcast.
All right, cool.
So then I thought, okay, you know what? I want to be on a retainer, because if someone shows up, doesn't show up, no matter what the hours are, I'm guaranteed money. And that was still going to be a significant less amount than what they were doing with their marketing budget already. So their risk was much lower already.
So that was the pitch.
That was the pitch.
Mitigate risk, lower cost.
Exactly. And the other part was I went to someone who I knew my first person was someone I knew I had a good relationship with, who liked me and who trusted me and knew I was I was a hard worker and I was super diligent and that I would always go above and beyond. So I was, you kind of like, I feel you go to the people that, have the relationship with, like know those relationships and then like carve out a position for you. And then one label turned into 2, 3, 4, and then I started making money off of all the other people who I was hiring underneath me, and that was really the beginning of like the mushroom effect of how I kind of began.
And then from there, you extended or amplified your specialty into content. When I say that, you had books and apps and several different exits that you discovered.
Absolutely. So the training to me, and even back then, even though it was a very different market back then, we didn't have apps and we didn't have all the social media, but that was always like a stepping stone to something bigger for myself. I always envisioned having something that was more of like my own empire, be it a small one at that, whatever, right? Like a company of some sort. So I used what I knew I had and leveraged. It was all about leveraging what my opportunity or my stuff was. So I leveraged what I had with these artists, and I went to these companies initially that I wanted to work with and said, look what I'm doing. Let's figure out a way if you put a pair of tennis shoes on me, guess what? So-and-so is going to see them. And guess what? When someone sees them on them, they're going to be in Us magazine, or they're going to be, because at the time, gossip rags were like the big thing, right? It wasn't like Instagram. And I started doing that. And like, I ended up getting big deals where, again, different deals than now, but it was at that time what endorsement deals looked like. So people like Nike were giving me clothes, and this one was giving me clothes, and I was getting this drink. And I ended up making deals with like Muscle Milk was my big sponsor, Polar Heart Rate Monitors was my big sponsor. So I had people, and then I would wear it, they would wear it, everyone would see it, and that's how the influence started. And then when I got my first book deal, I named it something where I can actually create a business around it, and that was No Gym Required. And that was how I started really kind of building more on the entrepreneurial side. I was really entrepreneurial, but then I was really going to take it into effect.
You're extremely persistent. I have my youngest daughter. I always say she'll take no like 1,000 times, and it's terrible to be a parent of hers.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I'm like,
yeah.
I don't worry about her at all, right? I got to put her in sales. But the one thing, because you are into the mental side of stuff,
I am absolutely.
And there's an issue that I'm dealing with, and it's the consistency of what we do, doing something every day.
Right.
And I'm one of the most disciplined, consistent people, although I find that there's certain things that our ego does not allow us to be consistent about. And it varies for everyone, which makes it difficult. So for me, I have a problem with food. Like I work out all the time, like you probably couldn't imagine. But my problem is I grew up so poor that I have this mental issue about eating that I can't leave food when you have all these kids. And then when I travel, I spoil myself with food and drink. And it really bugs me that I'm so disciplined and consistent and aware that I can't be, and it's almost like an alcoholic.
We should be married. We kind of have the same problem, actually.
But why is it?
Like an alcoholic, you're right, you can't help yourself.
Yeah,
like,
what is it? 'Cause I'm trying to discover it for myself.
You know what? It's really, I think everyone has an Achilles heel, and I think it's really tough not to beat yourself up over it, because that's what I do too. Because when you are self-aware and you do all the right things, and then you have this one blind spot, it's really, really difficult. So what works, I think, and I can just speak from even personal experience, forget about the mental stuff or whatever, is building structure for yourself. Because I think when someone has a ritual or routine or structure, it keeps them on point. And when you say travel, I think that's when I go awry too, and a lot of people, because their structure is thrown off, right? So really building those habits where it will basically try to keep you in line as much as possible. And that's why for me, I think building a morning routine is very important. Have a very structured morning routine, because if you start off strong, chances are you flailing later on are more limited. I mean, it's going to happen, and be okay with it happening. But that's the first thing. I think journaling is another one. Like when you write down, because that helps you be accountable. And then you physically and you visually see what you're doing. Sometimes there's like a thing between your brain and your brain and your hand, like you're seeing what you're doing, you're looking at it. Those are things that can help eliminate those issues more.
Yeah, it's interesting because someone said, don't worry about weighing yourself, because it's how you look, not how much you weigh.
Right.
You're 51 years old. And I found that weighing myself every day was an accountability partner.
Yeah.
It just reminds me in the morning.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Don't overeat. It just reminds me. No.
But that could be part of, so that's going to be part of your routine and your
right.
and your structure, that like when you wake up, the first thing you're going to do is weigh yourself. And then the second, like you have to build it out. So that's part of it. So then like a week later or whatever, a few days later, if you see that number start like getting higher and higher, that would psychologically maybe rein you in a little bit.
Now, you also have to deal mentally with success. And what I love about your journey is you've had several successes that, as I kind of asked you, how was that exit? Or did you make a lot? There's always, but.
Yeah, it's always a but.
Right?
Trust me.
The entrepreneur is always a but. And
always.
I'm someone who had over $100 million portfolio and lost it. So I have a big butt.
Wow, that's a huge butt. You have a huge butt.
That's right.
Excuse the
People
pun.
People pay for that, Kardashians. I got a bigger butt than you.
Exactly.
But anyway, it's interesting though, because that's where the consistent and persistent side comes in, because
absolutely,
even though things you had a tennis shoe company, you had an app, and you got involved in litigation like I did.
Yes.
But you never decided, this isn't worth it. In fact, you're back on track again.
Because that's not an option. But sorry, not to cut you off.
Yeah,
no,
please.
I was going to say, like, sometimes I wish I didn't have. Sometimes your best quality is also your worst quality in a way, And for me, that is the case, because I am so driven and so ambitious to a fault sometimes, because I never see something as like not just a no, but as like maybe something where I'm like, maybe it's enough. Like maybe I should just like kind of like call it in and like get a real job where I just like
hang out with the kids.
Or be like stay at home and just like drive my kids to soccer and gym and to tennis lessons or dancing. That's just not part of my DNA. And at some point you got to like have a come to Jesus with yourself, right? And be like, you know what? That's just not who I am. I am like in my DNA, I'm just someone who's extremely driven. And if any setback I ever had, it never really deterred me. My brain naturally would go to, okay, well, again, how do I get around it? Or, okay, so if that's not going to work, how do I figure out the next thing? It's about figuring it out, and always figuring it out.
A little bit of the Canadian accent.
Yeah,
that's good. Being a parent, though, you're a mom of two. I'm a dad of 4.
Wow. How do you do it?
Yeah, so there's no balance. And I believe in efficient, effective behavior, and that if you understand, this goes to my consistency. I'm a much better parent because every one of my children, including the one in college, and my mom, by the way, I have a typical Jewish mom, I consistently talk to them or email, text them every day for a minimum amount of time. So I'm very disciplined, because I believe
that's part of your
them
structure,
knowing
though.
that. Right. I'm very structured, but I don't like, for young entrepreneurs, this idea of balance. Early on, you can't be.
It's impossible. I can't stand this whole balance thing. It's impossible. Like, I think it's like kind of the politically correct thing, or like the thing that people say now. Like, like you can balance this, everything. You can work-life balance. It's if you show that to me, I'd be. I can I'll pick it apart. There's not one person, especially women, that they say, the people who are very, very successful, something is going to wane somewhere. It's impossible. You can't do everything 100%. I think you can have everything, but you can't have everything at the same time. You got to have something now, and then like you got to like do that, and then something else after, and then something else after.
And where does perspective, like I believe perspective is everything. I'm a gratitude person because it gives me perspective.
Right.
And I get to do everything in my life. I never have to do anything. And when things are a setback, it becomes a setup. I got a million of them.
I love
right?
that. I love that. A setback becomes a setup. I love that.
It is. And like, your career is that way. I mean, it really is. And
it's true.
You live in the favor of the universe and you have this mental perception. But I believe, I don't even believe in work. I believe in activity you get paid for and activity you don't get paid for. And that I infuse
You should write a book.
purpose.
These are great.
Yeah, we got a new one coming out. Exactly. Besides those three.
Yeah.
But, I believe when you're putting kids or young people at a detriment when you're talking about the ends all the time, following your passion and you should have balance. I'm like, no, dude, this is a hard world. And what I do is I take the hand that I'm dealt and I make it a good hand. And I have a feeling like you have this powerful perception. Can you give some insight on what your perceptions are of how you kind of make your hand always a good hand?
Well, I guess it's kind of similar to saying like the glass is half full versus half empty, right? And I think that really is the bottom line of what it is, right? Like it's about changing your perspective. And I think a lot of how to change your perspective for people there's people who are optimists, they say, and people who are pessimists.
Right. I'm a toptimist, by the way.
You're
a toptimist.
What's a toptimist?
The top of the optimist. I'm
really?
too optimistic.
You're too optimistic.
Yeah.
And so I call myself a realist, actually, but who is also on the spectrum of optimism. Because again, it's because I think you have a choice. Everything is a choice in life. You can choose to be confident. You can choose not to be confident. You can choose to be whatever you tell yourself is what you're gonna believe and be. So if your hand is a shitty hand, you know what? Think of one good thing about that hand, and then like basically explore that. And that's basically what I do my whole life with everything in life. It's like I'm choosing to see the good in something, so then I can like basically not just explore it, but like what's that? I'm losing not that word. Not
I always pursue it.
It. Or
I always say put faith in what you want. And you're going to get more of what you want.
Yeah, well that's
it. So like if you have a hand with one ace and the rest are duds, just put faith
in that one.
That's right.
It's the same. So I'm saying it's all saying the same thing, but in a different way.
So moving on, money. Right, you've made a lot of money in your career.
I wouldn't say a lot of money.
Well, not enough for what you want.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Yeah, but you've made money.
I've done okay.
I'm a make a lot of money, help a lot of people, have a lot of fun person.
Right.
Money's very important to me. I believe that allows you to shop, and if you shop for the right things, you're going to be happy. If you shop for the wrong things, you're not going to be happy. What role does money play in your journey?
Security. That's all
Just
I care
security.
about.
For
I don't
who?
make money for my. You know what? I think it's more of the thrill of the chase and the challenge. I'm not money motivated. If that it may sound strange. I mean, I do everything I do mostly because of the challenge to see how far I can get or how far I can push.
That's why you have the butt, by the way.
The butt?
Yeah.
The butt. Or like my butt. I'm like, well, thank you. Did you see it?
You're a fitness woman. Sorry, honey. But no, honestly, like I think this is very important distinction. Energetically, people that, you're persistent and you like the challenges and all that.
Yeah.
But like for me, I'm in business to make money and I have a purpose for my money.
What's your purpose for your money?
Allow it to appreciate, to either, number one, I'm grateful, but two, I add value to what I receive.
Right.
And I put things with good intention. So like last year I set a goal of, I built 2 community centers in Africa.
Okay. Well, that's
right. But,
so I started a charity.
But yeah, and for me though, money was so important because I grew up with 6 kids and a single mom and wanted to buy her a house and a car. So for me, it wasn't the money, it was what I could do with it.
Right.
And that's what drove me. And I find that people, and I have no problem attracting money. Yeah. Like if you really get past maybe it's worthiness or guilt about making a lot of money, you get rid of your butt.
Yeah. I feel like, I think you're right. I think there's a trigger that happens in someone's life that that puts them on that path. For me, I was very, very, very poor for a finite period of time. Right.
That's good.
And then, for exactly. And I remember like very poor. My mother, my dad, my father were getting a divorce. My mother was left with nothing with me and my sister. And my mother was cutting carpet out of our apartment to sell. And my mother, by the way, like she's no slouch. I mean, she's a psychiatric nurse and she had money, but
I get
long
it.
story
My mom's
short,
the same way. I get
right?
it.
And then my mother remarried somebody who was my stepfather, amazing man, who gave me a really beautiful life, But I remember so vividly, besides all the other memories, that memory of me thinking when my mother was cutting that carpet out that I'm never going to be poor and I'm never going to let someone else dictate my life. So that moment put me on the trajectory that I was on, where like from a little girl when I was 12 years old, I was working at the Olive Garden, opening up like as a hostess, when you're not even supposed to be working at that time,
Right.
and I was like opening up that door at Olive Garden in, Canada.
See, my wife was a hostess at Olive Garden
Oh,
too.
really?
I'm on the karmic link here. This is amazing.
You really are. Uh-oh, she should watch
That's
out
it.
for me.
That's out.
That's hilarious. Yeah, so like I think that was and that's still, that memory obviously is so vivid that I'm remembering it to this day to tell you on this podcast about it. So that drives me. Like, so I think there is obviously a link to the money, but it's more about the link is to be successful and to like never rely on somebody.
Now, I have 3 teenage daughters, and I'd love to ask this question. What advice would you give a 20, 18, and 15-year-old woman today about being a businesswoman?
That's a good question. And I talk to a lot of girls, and it's, what? I think overall, the advice I give to any girl is having confidence. I think confidence, like I said, is a choice, and becoming mentally strong, and not letting your peers dictate your self-worth. I think that to me is the most important thing. And anyway, and how to do that, there's a lot. I can have a whole podcast on this, but I think that having value or like doing things that make you see value in yourself is very, very important from a young age.
I think, Jennifer, you got the next book title, Confidence is a Choice.
Yeah, thank you.
I like that a lot.
I like that too, baby. I should do that.
That's good. All right. We have Jennifer Cohen with Dave Meltzer here with Entrepreneurs, the Playbook.